Hi, friends. I want to tell you about my newest book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love. Whenever I find myself answering the same questions over and over again, it usually means it's time to write down those responses as a resource. And this new book is born from conversations with high-achieving educators just like you. Just like you and me, we all run into hard decisions, career choices, navigating complex situations. Where do we turn to determine whether or not we're moving in the right direction? Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love is a 20-chapter book guiding you through the stories, insights, research, reflections, and applications for your way forward. Pick up your copy today for coaching on your leadership road ahead. You can find Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love at my website at williamdparker.com/books or wherever you purchase your books. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, along with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke. Jen, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you?
I'm doing well. This week's question of the week is supported by our friends at Summer Pops Math Workbooks. Principles: when students practice math over the summer, their math scores go up. So what is your summer math plan this year? A great way to start is by ordering free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Reach out to my friend Pete there today at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Jen, here's our question before we jump into this week's episode with John Mihalyo, and leaders are going to so enjoy that conversation. But here's a question that came from someone in one of my trainings. What are some strategies that help in fostering better parent involvement in the school? And I'm just going to say on the front, I always think about school in three categories: students, teachers, and community members. And I would just say that among those three audiences, I probably struggle the most with how do I get those parents as involved as I feel like my kids and my teachers are. So I also posed this question to another group that I was leading this past week too. But what are some thoughts you're thinking as you think about parent involvement in school?
Well, I really want to know what your colleagues and those in the room had to say, because, I think this question is asked a lot, and I think it's very, very dependent on the community and the reasons that you're asking parents to be more engaged. It's easy to jump quickly to, parent nights, student activity nights, that kind of thing, or parent-teacher conferences, checking the grades, being involved. And you and I have talked about this before. It's complex, right? Because a lot of parents give everything they can give, and it doesn't look like teachers want it to, or students want it to, or we think it should. So what were some of the ideas that you gained from your group?
Yeah. So this question was posed in the group that I was working with earlier this week from a leader who was looking at the end of the year, spring, and trying to figure out what's a way I can get more parents to come up as we wrap up the year. And there was another leader in the room that shared some really just practical feedback that has really enhanced involvement among kids. And so I actually just took some notes from what she shared, which was the importance of creating rituals that consistently invite parents to engage in school. And one of those things she likes to do in the spring is organize a celebration around student achievement. So unlike a lot of awards ceremonies that I've heard people talk about, she invites parents and lets them know in advance that their students are going to be recognized for their great achievement. But she also makes sure that when parents show up, that she's prepared for them. And so she does a lot of work in advance. She has a short questionnaire for every parent to fill out that just gives them a way to provide some feedback that she wouldn't be able to get otherwise. She always has food prepared, and to make sure that they know that food's going to be there is something that will give them a way to feel connected and a part of a family. She has a small gift that she's created for every parent so that there's something they can take home with them. And children are going to be acknowledged in a way that they're recognized for their strengths, so that every parent has an opportunity to see their child celebrated in some way um, or she believes that they'll want to send it out in social media. They want to post it with their friends. They want to talk about it. Something else that she's creating this year as well is a parent award, also just to recognize some of the parents who've been especially involved over the year. But in this particular case, I was just taking notes feverishly because those are not ways that I have invited. I mean, obviously, I've done at the secondary level a lot of awards, celebrations, or recognition of achievement. They seem in my old settings very assembly, very formal, but also sometimes because they're large schools, you're also dealing with huge numbers. So again, Jen, there's no prescription here. This may or may not work with the size or the age that you're doing, but those were just some, I thought, some helpful, tangible ways to try to create an inviting way for parents to be more connected.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that gets a parent involved is their child. I think
Mhm.
anything that's too vague or, laced with guilt, you should come, doesn't work very well. But parents will come out to support their child. I love the idea of awards. My caution to principals is make sure that you're not always awarding the same students and
Mhm.
the same, therefore the same parents. I've had parents say to me before, boy, it's really hard to be on social media this time of year because everybody else's kids get awards. And my kid never does. So I don't say that to create false awards or to falsely reward someone who doesn't deserve it, but it's something to be aware of that celebrating is so important. It's so important. Um, and, but let's just not forget how it feels to a kid who maybe has never gotten celebrated or a parent who's never been there to see it. So
Mhm.
it is the time of year, and it's so many schools do this so beautifully, so much engagement. And I think we should celebrate those schools too.
Yeah. Well, at the secondary level, I will add this, Jen, that there are a lot of places where parent engagement is already embedded.
Hmm.
Maybe we just need to be there.
Yeah.
So those spring banquets, those awards that are happening within special activities and groups or choirs or bands or sports teams, a lot of those are embedded within those, especially in the spring. And so, man, I know it's hard, and I know we want to be home and we don't want to be at school every evening. Um, and even as we're recording this for April and May's coming around the corner, my wife always called May Maycember because of how much I was gone in May. Um,
Yeah.
but it makes a difference because if you're at the places where parents already are at their kids' activities and events too, then you have an opportunity to build those relationships and to get that feedback too. So it doesn't have to be just something you host. It can be something that someone else is hosting that you're showing up and being a part of.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll add is another leader just commented that they've seen more parent engagement when they have the students help build and promote whatever it is that they're inviting parents to. Because when it's built by students and promoted by students, then those parents are so proud to show up and be a part of what they've created.
Right. I was one of my elementary schools. We had hundreds and hundreds of parents come, and you want to know why? Because the kids planned it, and it was their
Mhm.
artwork up, and it was them that was performing. And they said, "Mom and Dad and Grandma, Aunt Shirley, you have to come. You have to come." And so I agree. I think that's the way to get them there is make the kids part of the planners.
Yeah. Well, I never did student led conferences, but I've worked with a lot of leaders who do. And that just also sounds so intriguing is to, and not, it's not just parent to teacher, but it's student leading those
Right.
feedback too. Well, Principal Matters listeners, thank you for listening to our Q&A. Jen, before we wrap up, I want to make another announcement, and that is that in June, we have a new opportunity for Principal Matters listeners, something that we're still playing around with names for what these offerings are going to be, but one of our friends recently said maybe you guys should start calling this Principal Matters University because you're going to start offering some PD to listeners that's unique, and you're going to be offering one called the Principal's Guide to Conflict Management. Why don't you tell listeners a little bit of what they can expect if they want to sign up for this training that is going to be happening virtually June 3rd, coming up after schools. Most schools are going to be out.
Yes, I'm really excited about this opportunity. We're going to get together on June 3rd and talk about how conflict really is something to be embraced, not avoided. We'll talk about how to hit it head on. We're going to dive deeply into understanding different types of conflict, mastering kind of a cycle of addressing it. I call it the anticipate, analyze, and act cycle. We'll talk about common conflicts, how to empower others to manage, mediate, facilitate, intervene with conflict. And then, we'll also look at ourselves and think about how we might have a recurring role in conflict that pops up in our schools. So it'll be fun. It'll be dynamic. It'll be fast paced. We will laugh and we will learn together.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, we are excited to talk about this in the coming weeks. But if you're interested in learning together with Jen and me, we would love to connect with you June 3rd. So you can go to the website at williamdparker.com/guide, GUIDE, and you can sign up there for that PD. And we would just be thrilled to be able to learn together with you. So thanks, Jen, for being willing to offer that. Well, Principal Matters listeners, we just appreciate you listening and learning this week as we jump into this wonderful conversation with John Mihalyo. And until next time, thanks for doing what matters.
Thanks, everybody.
Support for Principal Matters comes from DigiCoach and its walk-through tool. I want you to picture walking through classrooms, observing teachers and students. In just 10 minutes, you'd hope to see good instructional strategies and student learning taking place, or maybe you have questions about something missing from instruction or planning. Instead of taking 30 minutes to write a follow-up email or leaving your teacher feeling unsupported, wouldn't it be great to have an app on your phone or tablet where you could send immediate feedback while also collecting data? Enter DigiCoach, a customizable walkthrough and coaching tool created by school leaders for school leaders with thousands of pre-written, research-based commendations and coaching tips empowering you to provide quick, actionable feedback. DigiCoach is not an evaluative tool. Instead, it is an easy-to-use feedback and coaching tool, an efficient way to store your notes and collect data for improving student outcomes right in your hands. It can be used on iPhone, Android, or tablets and includes speech-to-text functions. Make the most of your walkthroughs with a tool that saves you time and enhances meaningful feedback to your teachers. Go to digicoach.com to learn more, and please tell them Principal Matters recommended you check them out. That's digicoach.com. Hi, friends. Did you know that Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, has been downloaded over 1.5 million times? We are so proud to share conversations, interviews, and resources to support leaders like you who are serving school communities worldwide. And I'd like to invite you to explore our books, our professional development offerings, our Grow Academies, our masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations, because we're here to help you and your teams build schools that you're proud to call home. So here's my question. How are you planning to keep growing in the semester ahead? We're booking events right now for the next 2 years, and we would love to serve you in person or virtually. So visit williamdparker.com and click services, or email me at will@williamdparker.com to connect. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's show.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 442. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're going to talk about the keys to successful schools with my special guest, John Mihalyo. John Mihalyo, founder of Elementary Advancement Solutions, is a seasoned education professional with over 20 years of admin experience and 15 years as a Catholic school principal. He has a proven track record in supporting Catholic and faith-based school leaders in leadership, advancement, and enrollment. He has successfully collaborated with leaders across multiple states, establishing himself as a respected authority in education. His accomplishments include founding 2 advancement offices and securing over $1.8 million in funding. Additionally, he led a $6 million renovation project and increased school enrollment by 24% when he was a principal. Through Elementary Advancement Solutions, he partners with schools to develop customized strategies, leveraging his expertise to help others achieve their goals. He resides with his family in Apex, North Carolina. John, Mihalyo, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners
Will,
something
it's
else they may be surprised to know about you?
yeah, Will, it's great. It's great to be with you. And as somebody who's listened to your podcast for many years, it's a honor to be talking with you today. So thanks so much for having me in Apex, North Carolina, the peak of good living here.
Well, I believe that. Now, I'm not letting you off the hook, though. You have to tell listeners
No,
something they may be surprised to know about you.
something that's surprising about me is I have I reside here with my family, my wife and my two kids. Uh, Something surprising about I played college tennis. How about that? And then I was actually a tennis coach for a number of years in high school and actually coached a state championship team in Virginia. So a shout out to our Potomac Falls High School up there in Sterling, Virginia.
Oh, what a great sport. Do you still play?
I try to, but not as much anymore. I don't think my knees like it as much. So everybody's telling me I got to try pickleball.
Well, yeah, that's become the rage. So
Yes.
that's so cool. I'm not a tennis player, but I admire people that can play tennis. Now, you, John, have been a seasoned leader, have had great success in leadership, and now, very similar to what I do, you do a lot of coaching, consulting, working with leaders in their work. And so I wanted to invite you into today's conversation because not only were you a practicing leader in understanding the keys to successful schools, but you study leadership a lot. So welcome to this conversation. Before we dive in though to the that part of the conversation, I want to begin just by asking you to back up and talk a little bit about some of your past experiences in your former schools and some of the things that you were most proud of in that work.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of unique in that I've worked as an administrator in both public and Catholic schools. Was an assistant principal for 5 years in public schools and made the move into the Catholic schools back in 2008. And so it seems like a lifetime ago. Took over a struggling Catholic school that's enrollment was down, and we learned after about 24 hours on the job that the building was falling apart. That was kind of my first journey into administration, into Catholic school administration, was walking into a school that definitely needed a lot of work. But what you learn is that when you have great people working with you and great families that want to see that school succeed, they're just hungry for a vision. And if you can bring that vision and that excitement and show them where the school's going, I think that's so important. And so after being in that position for 4 years, took over a school in Raleigh, North Carolina that again enrollment was dropping and really had gone through a lot of transitions over the past few years with leadership, and had gone through multiple principals, and so just taking over in that role and again bringing on a great group of people, and a lot of people are often feeling like they need to be the smartest person in the room, and I always tell people you better know what you know, but you better know what you don't know, and then know who knows that and get them on your team as quickly as possible. And so we were very blessed there to have such a great team. And then the last school that I was at, of course, I was there for about 15 minutes when that little thing called COVID started, which I'm sure you might have heard about that out in Oklahoma. And so, just dealing with everything that came with that and all the challenges with that. But just in terms of starting the company that I did right now, I just kept seeing that schools needed that help with the business side of education. And so that's something that really I'm passionate about. Love working with the kids, love working with the teachers and parents. But just really that business side of education is something that I feel very passionate about and something that I can really help a lot of schools with.
All right. So we have to back up because I think there's a little more information listeners are going to want to know about
Okay.
taking over a school that's literally falling apart. And you weren't being
Literally.
figuratively, you're being literal there, John. And I know a little bit of the
Correct.
story, but tell listeners what that exactly means, because it seems like in all of my work with schools, I'm always like running into, I thought I'd never experienced this.
Yes, it was kind of like the scene in Jaws when they see the shark for the first time, and he goes, "I think we're going to need a bigger boat." Okay, and literally, I was there on the day before I actually started, and the person comes down in a hard hat, and he said, "Are you in charge here?" And I kind of said, "Well, I will be in about 18 hours. Something I can help you with." And he said, "Well, I just want to let you know we're not going back up there." And I said, "I don't even know where you are. Like, what? I don't even know what you're here doing." And he walks me upstairs and literally shows me a wall that has a gap of about 6 to 8 inches in it from the roof to the sidewall. And he said that wall, we're not sure about the stability of it. And so literally for the next year's time, we literally took every brick off of the building, reinforced it, huge capital project that was done, renovation project that was done. But the school looked beautiful when it was done. And when you look back upon a project of that nature, again, we'd have to close off like a third of the school while we did this part, and we could only use this part of the school, and then we had to close this part off the school. But when it was all done, it was a great accomplishment. We made it, and the school looked great, and the school to this day still looks great. Whenever I visit the town that it's in, it still looks great to this day. And so
Okay.
a lot of fun. A lot of work and a lot of sleepless nights when it was happening, but as I always say, the days are long, but the years go by real fast.
So this is such a perfect analogy, John, for what we're going to talk about next, because okay, so you've literally been in a building where the foundation was so weak that the wall was splitting 6 to 8 inches apart,
Yes,
and you had to close your school down by thirds every time you moved kids around and teachers around to work on these things. And by the time you finished, you guys had established literally physically a stronger foundation, stronger walls, a better, beautiful place that you can go back now and look at and like, wow, what a beautiful setting. So let's sit on that analogy, because in your work, and I know this because I've talked to you and I've looked at your resources on your website. You talk a lot about how identity and culture are the hub for all of the other outcomes of successful schools. So I'm going to use that word foundation instead of hub.
Mhm.
How take me there. Why for you, even when you talk about the business of school, why do you always begin with identity and culture?
Well, I think you have to know who you are. And it's ironic yesterday because I was literally just recording a podcast with a leader in Australia. And one of the things that we were actually talking about was culture. And I think she gave such a great definition of it. She said there's the culture is the way we do things. And the thing I think a lot of schools fall into the trap of is that's the way we always do things. There's a big difference between that's the way we always do things and that's just how we do things here. The culture is so important in terms of defining that set of core values and that set of core beliefs for your particular school. For us as Catholic schools, for example, if your Catholic culture is not at the heart of everything that you're doing, you're probably just a private school. And maybe you have that Catholic school name that's attached to you, but if your Catholic culture isn't at the center of what you're doing, it's just a private school. Okay. And so I think it's just so important to be grounded in those core values and be and rooted in that identity and in that culture of knowing who you are, because otherwise, I always compare this to saying that as you talked about before, the keys to a successful Catholic school. And I always say that the center point of the culture is kind of like the tabletop. Okay. And the other legs are what holds the tabletop up. If you take one of those legs out, maybe it wobbles a little bit. If you take two of them out, it wobbles a whole lot. And three of them, you probably wouldn't even put a drink on top of that table because it would collapse. But without that tabletop holding everything together, you don't have a table. You just have a couple of legs that really are rather useless without that culture piece. So I think that culture is so important. And I think that schools that overlook that and say, well, it's got to be a program that we have to find. No, it's got to be the people and it's got to be the culture that are going to be the most important thing that you can have within your school.
Culture's not a program, culture's people. And I want to come back to something you said, because this audience is leaders that are in public schools, private schools, Catholic schools, charter schools, international schools, because I hear from leaders in all those settings. So for you, that culture, the people with whom you're working, that identity has to be built around, okay, what are the core values that we share in common that we believe are essential and necessary for us to have a thriving, flourishing community of learners? And so, um, I, I don't
And
want to
I
move too
think I think
quickly.
sometimes too is, well, no, but I think it's sometimes what are those core values that we all agree on? But the challenge that I'm going to give to schools is what are those core values, not what do we want them to be? Okay, because sometimes there's a big difference in what we want our core values to be, but where we're at right now just doesn't model that. And so sometimes that requires some really hard conversations and some honest conversations about, okay, we all know this is what we want them to be eventually, but what are they today? And where are we right now in terms of getting there?
There you go. So we can be aspirational, but aspiration means nothing if it's not practiced value. And
Correct.
so having just a really honest look at, okay, what do we say we believe? And then how do we see those beliefs translated in the way we treat our students and teachers and each other in this community? And that leads into, there's a great model that you have on your website. And I hope that I know
Thank
at the
you.
end of the conversation, you'll point everybody to your website and resources, but I love this picture because you have this, it's like a circle, and in the middle you have that identity and culture piece, and then from that you have these spokes that are pushing out into these 5 other areas. And I'm just going to name them, John, because I think this is such a helpful visual for listeners. But you talk about, from the hub of culture and identity grows community engagement, individual student growth, workforce development, operational vitality, and then leadership. So I'm just really curious, and you can take this whatever direction you want, John, because I know you could talk about this for hours, but walk us through why you chose those spokes as areas, or maybe that should even say the fruits that grow out of that strong culture and identity.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that, as a Catholic school leader, that I've really benefited from is to realize that we don't just have to use other Catholic schools as the model for what it is that we're doing. I attended a great conference in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, the Baldrige Quest for Excellence Conference. And they are all about continuous improvement. And how do you know you've made those continuous improvements? And so when I attended that particular conference, I accidentally went to a session that I thought was going to be with a school, but it ended up being with a hospital in Iowa. Okay. And I sat through this session, and it was wonderful because I'm hearing what this hospital was doing in terms of growth and in terms of creating a great culture. I said, that's a really good idea. If we did this, but switched it to this within the school, that would work. And then I kind of said, well, if I did this here, I know what the schools are going to say, but I don't know is what these other businesses are going to say. And so when we look at best practices and we look at what things work, you don't just have to look at schools to be a great school. And so when we look at our NSBEC standards as Catholic schools, we look at the Baldrige Quest for Excellence. They have a great guide for Catholic schools. Just in terms of my experience over the 15 years in Catholic schools, I kind of started to see trends within those things. And when you pull all those things together is kind of where I got this from in terms of the beliefs. And some people say, wow, you should have this instead of this, or maybe this shouldn't be there. But I find if you have these 6 areas, you've probably got a pretty darn good school. And when we say, you say leadership, well, that's not just your principal. Okay. Everybody in your building should have some sort of a leadership role. That could be your student leadership. That could be your committees. That could be your faculty representatives, your advisory committees, whatever the case might be, your PTAs, whatever. And I also am very careful too with when we talk about the buzzword for many years was academic excellence. Academic excellence. Okay, our schools have to have academic excellence. And I thought to myself, if you have a kid who is struggling but grows, and I'll use testing examples, a kid who scores a 30% on a test and then the next year scores a 65%, people say, well, he didn't pass the test. But that's growth right there in a year. Okay, so when we talk about growth, it's how are our kids growing each year, not just academically, but spiritually, morally, developmentally, physically. How are they growing? And so when we want to find that individual student growth, I think that's such a big thing that goes so much further than beyond test scores. And so to me, the components of this were just so important because I think if you can say that you're successfully doing these things, I guarantee you've got a full school and you've got a school that is thriving, not just going to survive, you are thriving.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Principals know a strong school starts with a strong team, making sure teachers feel heard, supported, and valued. But in a busy school year, it's easy to miss how your staff is really doing. That's why I'm excited about Alpaca, a new way for school leaders to listen to their teachers and support them well. It all starts with one simple question: how are you doing? And how easy is that? Alpaca's quick pulse surveys give teachers a way to share honest feedback. No long forms or 1 to 5 scales, just meaningful insights that help you know where to celebrate and where to focus. And celebration, Alpaca makes it easy. Each month, Alpaca delivers a teacher celebration kit with care packages, recognition ideas, and fun activities. It's effortless for principals and ensures teachers feel heard and celebrated. With Alpaca, your teachers will feel heard and you will feel like a stronger leader. Make a real difference in your school's culture at alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters and get 15% off just for Principal Matters listeners. That's alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states showed that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off of your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at IXL.com/PM today. I love those distinctions, and especially recognizing that leadership means everyone, including students, including parents, including any person that's in that school that has the capacity. And then also, I love it that you use student growth versus academic excellence, because you're right. The goal is not, again, it's not just aspirational. It's like, okay, show me in practice where this student, and you can pull any kid in the school, is growing, because if that's happening, then I can call that achievement.
Right.
So let me just sit for just a moment on operational vitality, because
Yeah.
I know one of your jams is the business side of education, John. And
Yep.
and you've thought a lot about this because you've had to, as a leader, and I know that in private sectors, sometimes this is obviously more of a burden and responsibility than it is in the public sector, because not only are you managing all the learning outcomes, but you are responsible for the 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 capital often that's being raised, that's being brought in. You're responsible often for the budgets for every person that's hired for you, and you're responsible to answer for those, like in the public sector, often like a superintendent would be in those settings. So sit on that for a moment and talk about some of the lessons you've learned over time that have been helpful in ensuring strong operational vitality.
Yeah, so I think with operational vitality, with the one of the biggest misconceptions in our Catholic schools is that our Catholic schools have all kinds of money, and I can tell you that's just not true. When you talk about accountability in a Catholic school, you have to realize that Catholic schools are operating on tuition dollars, and if you have a great school, you will have people that will want to enroll in your school, which thus brings you tuition dollars to meet your budget. But if you have a struggling school where students are leaving, or people are saying, listen, we enrolled here last year, but we're not going to be enrolled this year. And I'm not, obviously, we are there for our kids first and foremost. Let me just say that when we have this conversation around operational vitality, we are not putting dollars and cents values on kids, but there is that budgetary piece, that vitality piece of things, that you do have to cover your costs. Okay. You're not there to make a profit. You're not there to be rolling in the dough in terms of things, but you have to cover your costs, and you have to plan for things. And so, if your tuition is an average of $7,500 and 10 students leave your school, you now have to figure out a way to make up $75,000 in your budget. Okay. Well, that might be a half of a teacher's salary, or that might be a teacher and a half salary right there. Okay. In terms of things, or that might be, hey, we were going to do a renovation on the roof that we're going to have to put off now, or whatever the case. So there's such a big piece of this, because you are operating more as a CEO of a building, because you are responsible for the marketing, you are responsible for the recruitment, you are responsible for the budgeting, you're responsible in many cases for deciding how much of a raise your teachers are going to get. You're then also dealing with the HR issues within the school of saying, I'm here to evaluate my faculty members. You're there to hire, you're there to offer contracts, you're there to offer salaries, you're there to, all of this stuff is just goes into that operational vitality piece. And if you're operating in the red year after year after year, you're probably going to get noticed by the people you have to answer to. So there's so much that goes into it as a Catholic school leader. And this is where if you think about things, many of our costs in our schools are going to be fixed. Every single one of us is going to have to pay an electric bill. We're all going to have to pay the water bill. We're all going to have to pay for the grass to be cut or whatever the case might be. But when we talk about where we're going to generate revenue from, well, as a Catholic school, you're going to generate it from tuition dollars. You're going to generate it from third-party support, whether it be advancement grants, gifts, things of that nature. Or sometimes you're blessed enough to have parish support that comes in for you a little bit. But the majority of your operational vitality is going to come from your enrollment piece. And so you think about how many fundraisers you'd have to do. Again, if your average tuition is $7,500, how many fundraisers do you have to do to raise $75,000? Okay. And for those schools out there selling wrapping paper or coupon books or Hershey bars, that's a lot of those that you got to do to get $75,000. So it's just when you look at the big picture of things and seeing that the main thing has to be the main thing. And our schools, if we don't have students in them, we don't exist.
So let's sit there for a moment, because I want to just bring this full circle for people that are listening that are either private or public, because here's what I hear you saying, which is that, operational vitality involves all the things that you just mentioned, from, marketing to recruiting to HR to raises to salaries to benefits to fixed costs to, grants and fundraising and all those things. But at the end of the day, enrollment is the greatest driver of you being able to identify what your budgets are going to be anticipated. And it's the same thing in the public sector too, John, because this depends state to state, but in most states, your student ratio, your student counts will determine the amount of funding that you're going to be receiving.
Correct.
for that work. So whether you're a private or a public school person, at the end of the day, your school cannot continue to grow or flourish or attract other people if your enrollment doesn't stay strong. And so so I want to stay there for a minute, because in order for enrollment to stay strong, a leader has to be able to look at his or her school and recognize it. I'm just going to refer to a great book by Stephen Covey that I'm sure you're familiar with, called The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything. And he talks about how that in any organization, you have to have self-trust, relational trust, organizational trust. But then he talks about market trust, or what I like to call brand trust, which is when people hear the name of your school, your organization, your place, what do they immediately associate with that? And is that where they want their child? And so stay here a little bit longer with me, because for you, I'm going to guess, and you're coaching with leaders, but fill in the blanks here. How do you help them to keep that mindset when they think about operational vitalities, how to keep that mindset connected to the experiences that you want students to have, so they come back and that more want to be there?
Yeah, and I think the Speed of Trust book is such a great example, because I think there's a story in there that he tells about the deal that was done with Warren Buffett, and a deal that would have taken many years to get done, and instead it got done in like 30 days or 60 days, whatever the case would be, if I remember it correctly. So, I think if you are a prospective family, a current family, or an alumni family of a school, the brand of the school and the reputation of the school needs to be important to you. Okay. And what that school has to offer. And here's why I say this. If you're going to be going to that school in the future, you want that school to be great when your kids get there. You want when your son or daughter gets to enroll in that school, whether it be as a freshman or a kindergartner or a preschool, whatever the case might be, you want that school to be set up for success. If you're already enrolled there, you want the school to just continue to improve so that your children benefit from it. Your children are benefiting from the success that school has. But then there's that alumni piece too that I think is often overlooked, in that if we look back and say, hey, where did you go to school? And you say the name of your school, is the reaction from people, oh, or is it, oh, wow, that's really cool. Okay. you talk to somebody, if somebody says, I played football for Notre Dame, you go, whoa, that's really cool right there, because the reputation is there for it. So you're protecting the reputation of the school, for no matter which stage of the game that you're in. Okay. And so for me, when I'm working with schools, one of the things that I'm always asking is what is your brand? What is your core values that you're trying? What makes you unique? What about your school says that I should come here instead of going to this other school down the road? What is it that you have that I should want? Okay. And one of the things that I often hear Catholic schools say, and I actually gave a keynote recently about this, and I said, if I asked you what makes your Catholic school unique, and the first answer out of your mouth is, well, we're a big family. And the second thing is, we go to mass once a week. To me, if you enroll in a Catholic school, those are expectations. Like those automatic, like I assume that that's already happening. If that's your selling point, that's like you telling me, hey, Will, I want to sell you this car. It's a really great car because it has a steering wheel and tires. Well, it should have a steering wheel and tires. Okay. It's a car. What else you got? What else does it do? Okay. So when we're talking about our Catholic schools, if we're resting on the fact that we're a big family, we got to go deeper than that. We need to be better than that. We need to showcase what we're doing in a much different way than just we're a big family. That to me, if you say you're a Catholic school, you better be a big family. Okay. That's a given for me. What else you got for me?
So reputation, I'm going to repeat back to you what you said in the way that I wrote it down. Reputation influences and attracts loyalty.
I think so.
Okay. But
Because
reputation can't just be built on the most basic expectations that you would have for what a school is. It has to be something. I'm going to use a Seth Godin purple cow analogy, which is that reputation. As a marketer, he would say that you have to create an experience that is uniquely different from the experiences that I could have somewhere else. And
Yes.
so let me use this as a segue into a question I like to ask experienced leaders like you, John. But let's apply this to a leader who's stepping into a situation where they want to see significant change in the way that their school is marketing, or maybe they're stepping into a new season with their school. What advice would you give that leader in order to step into that change with the right kind of mindset that could lead to these kinds of outcomes?
So are you saying in terms of enrollment or in terms of the whole big picture?
Well, you can take that whatever direction you want to,
Yeah.
John. I'm kind of at this point cultivating that expertise area that you have, which
Okay.
is helping schools understand that how important that business side is. But it's, as you and I I think are already saying this, and I'll just be clear with listeners, it's all connected. And so
100%.
so,
Yeah.
so the identity and that culture and that community engagement and student growth and workforce and operational vitality and leadership are all a part of the package of the brand that you want to create for this to be a place where
Correct.
you would want your child to be. So if you're sitting down with a new leader who's like, oh man, I'm stepping into a new situation or a new role, what are some of those things I need to keep in mind that are most important for me as a leader in order to see those kinds of outcomes happening as I move forward?
And as you know, I do a podcast, Catholic School Leaders podcast, and I had a couple of months ago the opportunity to have an old college teammate of mine who now runs a marketing agency up in Coshocton, Ohio. So Kirby is a great voice with this, and the title of the episode is called "Delivering Marketing Joy" because that's what he always is saying to his clients. And when he talks about branding, his definition of branding on that particular episode was your brand is what people say about you when your back is turned. And if you really think about that, I think that's such a great way to look at things because, we can paint rose-colored glasses all over the place, but what are people saying about us when our backs are turned? And I think the biggest thing for new leaders, or if your school is struggling, first and foremost is you got to be honest with yourself. You got to be looking in the mirror and sometimes have those tough conversations to identify things. You mentioned the guide that I had on the particular website. I'm going to tell you right now, if that's something that somebody's looking at, the answers are not in there, but it's going to give you great questions to figure out the answers for your school because each school is unique. And what's happening at your school might be different than what's happening at the school 3 miles down the road from you. So the purpose of that guide is to give you some deeper dive questions to be asking within your school community to figure out what those answers are. And that's what I do for a lot of schools, is to help them figure out what those answers are and to ask the hard questions. Because you may say to me, hey, our issue is A, B, and C. But when you start to pull back the layers, you realize A, B, and C are just effects from X, Y, and Z happening. Those are the causes. These are just happen to be side effects of it. So I think for me, the advice I would have to people is, number one, if your school is struggling, if your school is going through some transition, be honest and be open. Be willing to listen. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So as a new leader, you should do twice as much listening as you do talking. But I guess even on a deeper dive than that, I think one of the things that a lot of Catholic schools forget is, again, as it comes back to, Will, it's all about the people. When you have a family that comes in for a tour of your school, this is something that I work with, the schools that I work with, we talk about all the time, is how do you make that experience so personal for that person who's taking a tour of your school, that when they're walking the halls, they can literally see their son or daughter in that class that they're walking by. And they can literally see their son or daughter walking into the school for the first day. And you're giving them this, you're the storyteller. Okay. You are the storyteller to share with them of what it's going to look like for their son or daughter being in your school and what that looks like, so that they can be on board with it and that they get excited about it. And so to me, I would say do a lot of listening, ask a lot of questions to get to the root cause of maybe what those issues are. I had a chance a couple of years ago to go to the to a conference down in Orlando, and the person that was the speaker in this particular session, she gave such a great analogy. And she says, you want to get to the root cause of the problem, because we know as principals, we walk into a class and the class is chaotic, right? And you say to yourself, this teacher has no control over this class. So the root cause of the problem is there's no control. And you go, well, wait a minute. I'm listening to the questions he or she is asking them, and they're not very good questions that they're being asked. So that's leading to misbehavior. So it's the questioning that's leading is the root cause. Well, let me see your plans. Well, I didn't do any today. Oh, okay. So the root cause is you were poorly planned, which led to poor questioning, which led to poor student behavior. But if you're just addressing the student behavior, you're not getting to the root cause of the problem. So don't be afraid to draw back the layers a little bit to get to the real core of what it is that might be happening. And just a spoiler alert on this one, change, people say, I don't like change. Okay. And my argument is always, it's not change that people don't like, it's transition. If somebody is going to eat healthier, they're probably going to feel better in a couple months. But it's that transition of eating fruit and vegetables instead of eating potato chips that they don't like. So the change is the part that's going to make you a better school, but the transition is going to be a challenge.
Wow, so much wisdom in that, John. What I appreciate about that response is you've so wisely did not answer that question by prescribing behavior. You said every school is unique. And even when we're talking about these big general themes you and I have been discussing, and I want you to point people to the guide that you've created, but even within that guide, if you look at it, every one of these categories, you have 12 or 13 different questions, because it's the questions that you ask within these areas that lead you to the root cause, that help you that help you determine, okay, where is it in my unique situation, in my unique community, and with my culture and my teachers and my students, where we might need to tweak or focus, or, as you said, transition those thoughts too. So,
and I remember too, Will, like I would have people that would call me and they would say, hey, how are you doing this? Like your school is doing this when it comes to recruitment or advancement or whatever. And I was like, well, we do this, 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 this. And I literally remember people saying, are you crazy? And I said, why? What's wrong? You're telling them what we do. And I said, yeah. Well, what if, aren't you afraid they're going to just take it and do it too? And I said, we do it because we believe it. Okay. If you just try to go and imitate somebody else, you're probably going to get frustrated or bored or not see the results, because this was tailored for what we're doing here because we believe in it. It's part of our core values. You just go try to steal somebody else's ideas, you're probably going to see frustrating results. Okay. So I think for each individual school, there's a unique community that you're serving. And if you don't ask the questions about how it is impacting your particular community, and you just try to duplicate something that's happening in the town next door because they're having success, you're probably coming at this the wrong way.
I love that. Well, John Mihalyo, you are someone who's spent a lot of time studying and teaching now keys to successful schools. So thank you for your wisdom and guidance and your resources. And I want, as we wrap up, two things. One, for you to tell listeners how they can stay connected to you and find your resources. And two, just any parting words of wisdom as we say goodbye.
Yeah, so elementaryadvancement.com is my website. I am on LinkedIn, and so you can find me on there as well. But the website, elementaryadvancement.com. I do a podcast called the Catholic School Leaders Podcast, which is a great resource because I know that schools out there are just looking for things and looking to be talking about issues that are really dealing with and are real within their schools. And we try to talk to people on there that are in the Catholic school community, but also that are helping schools deal with the business side of schools. So I think there's a lot of great resources on there. I do individual coaching for schools, like I said, through advancement and enrollment and leadership, and also run mastermind groups for Catholic school leaders, which is always a lot of fun because, as you know, Will, we share some common friends in there. We have folks on those groups from the United States, Canada, Australia, and it's always great to bring Catholic school leaders together because we find that no matter where we're at, 95 to 98% of the things that we're talking about are always the same. And so it's always a lot of fun. It always helps us to get better. My advice to school leaders out there is if you are somebody who just feels that maybe your school is not where it should be, put your pride away and don't be afraid to seek out help, to seek out and ask questions. And that doesn't mean it has to be from me, but I'm just saying in terms of find someone who knows it, because I think that's one of the things that I always love about our mastermind groups is somebody is dealing with something at their school that they bring up and they want to discuss, and they think that they are the first school that has ever gone through that. And 99 times out of 100, at least one other person in the room will go, "Oh, I had something really similar to that. Now let me show you how I navigated that." And it's so helpful. So there's strength in numbers, iron sharpens iron, whatever expression you want to use, but just don't put your ego aside, and you don't have to be the hero of the story. Helping others navigate that journey is just so important, but don't be afraid to seek out people that can help you and just to continue to make you better.
I love it. Well, John, as we wrap up, I do want to give a quick shout out to a mutual friend of ours, Jethro Jones, who has been doing work like this for a very long time. And it was
Yes.
one of his
Great guy.
cooperatives. Yeah, it was through one of his gathering moments that you and I got to meet. So kudos to our friend Jethro for his work through Transformative Principles podcast. And kudos to the great work that you're doing, John. Principal Matters listeners, I just want to remind you that as you're wrapping up today's conversation, you're thinking about the keys to successful schools in your own practice. Take a moment to check out John's website. Take a moment to look at his guide, because those questions are super helpful for just giving yourself permission to reflect on the questions that would help you to identify what works in your setting uniquely for your community, for your students and your teachers. So John, thank you for your wisdom, for your guidance today. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. And we'll talk to you again soon. So sometimes we just pop in bonus content at the end of a conversation, John. And so as you and I were wrapping up off air, we started this conversation where suddenly I'm taking even more notes. So listeners, I'm going to say three things to you that John and I just talked about: impact versus impression, engagement versus involvement, and ambassadors versus volunteers. And we're not going to unpack all of those, but John, you were just telling an amazing story about a friend of yours named Jason Curtis. Why, when you're building the kind of culture you want in the school, is ambassadors more important to you than volunteers?
Well, I think one of the things I learned from Jason is that when you are an ambassador to your school, you think about it, if you're a volunteer versus an ambassador, an ambassador has like that official, I'm part of the school, like you feel empowered to be part of the school. You're taking on a role. Hey, we need volunteers to help work the concession stand. Well, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. but ambassadors means that you are there with excitement. And I know one of the things that he used to do with his schools, I'm assuming it's still the case with if a volunteer sign up or an ambassador sign up opportunity went out, if the opportunity went out at 8 o'clock, if you hadn't signed up by 8:05, you probably were not getting a spot. Okay. And schools think to themselves, how that's not possible. Like that's not like I can't get parents to sign up for anything. And you're telling me that you're turning people away? How is that possible? But when we approach things from the perspective of our parents are ambassadors to our school, and everything that we do at our school, you mentioned before, Will, is community engagement versus involvement. We need everybody to volunteer 20 hours. That's a volunteer opportunity, and it's community service, kind of like, versus, wow, this is something that I want to be part of so that I can make our community a better place. And this is what's happening at our school. Why wouldn't I go to this? I'm an engaged member of our community. Why would I miss this? Such a different approach to things.
And what a great mindset. And so when we have ambassadors instead of volunteers, when people are engaged instead of just being involved, then we're actually making an impact, not just an impression. So, wow, John, what a great bonus. Thank you for that. And thank you again.
You will get much stronger results from those three things that you just mentioned. Well, if you are a principal listening to that, you hear those things, the amount of results you will get from those three things will be exponential.
Love it. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.